listening to Achtung Millwall, broadcasting from the beautiful South Birmingham. Accept no substitute.
Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to Achtung Millwall. My name is Nick Hart. It's summertime and the living is easy. So easy that I've only got one guest with me today. I was trying to rustle up some of the boys, but Michael, being a trooper, Michael Avery, has come through. Everyone else is wage-slaved workers at work. Welcome to the show, Michael Avery.
Thank you very much, Nick. Thanks for having me. I'm double jabbed and ready to get back in the den when we have over 16,000 fans. So let's rock and roll.
Have you got your COVID passport yet? I don't know where we're going to get those from, but I suppose you get a little card, don't you, when you've had your 2 jabs? I don't know if that's to be brandished at the gate as we go. But
I wonder if it will be all Brexit and it will be like a big, massive thing over what colour it will be. Do you remember what it was last time?
It's got to be dark blue, mate. It's got to be dark blue.
Yeah, it's got to be dark blue.
I am actually old enough to have held a dark blue passport all those years ago, when the very first passport I ever got was a dark blue traditional one on Her Britannic Majesty's command, at this big spiel on the inside. I think we're straying from the path of Millwall matters. Welcome to the show, listeners. This is a summertime edition. We're still in that kind of vague pre-season zone at the moment, Michael, aren't we? But the hook on which we thought we'd do a little recording was the supporter survey. The club have organised a supporters survey, which is quite interesting. I find it interesting anyway, dear listeners. You might not, but I do, and Michael does too. So we're gonna come back to that, having just dangled that tasty prospect in front of you. We're going to take it away for the moment, Michael. We're just going to cover a few little bits and pieces of Millwall related news. Obviously, we're deep into the pre-season now. Gary Rowett is confirming that inquiries are being received for our players. We don't really know who or what or how much. There's no detail there at all. But I suppose, the Jed question is the big one, isn't it? I mean, there's a piece on the South London about Jed saying how he's going to give his all for Millwall in this season, which is potentially his last season for the Lions. We don't know whether there's any transfer interest in him. Certainly, I've seen no rumours online about Jed's position at all. Have you, Mike?
No, I haven't seen anything about him wanting to go. I think that the signings we've made, especially the George Saville one, which yes, we may not pay big transfer fees like the 8 million, but he's not going to be on a sort of cheap wage, is he, George Saville? So I think there's a bit of intention there to show Jed, these are the type of players we want to sign. These are the type of players who show our intention of getting back up the table and into those playoffs. So
yeah,
if you do want to play in the Premier League in the next couple of years, hopefully it could be with us. But the one that got me, Nick, and I'm not sure about you and the listeners, was after signing Saville. I think it was in the back of the Southwark News, wasn't it, where it was a bit like, I think he discussed about like he's got not got much left in the budget, has he? Or
no,
I
doubt we have. I mean, it's been a tough year for all of us, everyone. It's been a tough business year for football, but a tough business year for Millwall specifically, which is our concern. I don't suppose we do have fortunes to throw around. I mean, each of the signings we've made, including Afobe and Saville, I mean, all have been big hits. I mean, Daniel Ballard is on loan for the season from Arsenal. Don't know what the financial arrangements are on those kinds of deals, but each of them look like good, solid additions to a squad that probably, if it's fully fit, which is probably going to be the key question for the season ahead, and we fell short a little bit on the fitness front last term, but it should be a squad good enough to. I think we're top 6 material if we can keep it together, and if we get lucky with injuries, and certainly with those additions, each of those additions should say to Jed that the club is aiming in the same general direction that he wants to go in his career. I feel anyway.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I think as well it's even like the little things that sort of get sort of that appear as like a little blip on the radar and you forget. But it was like signing, was it Long, the goalkeeper? What a very, very steady number 2. I mean, we said in jest about Frank Fielding, the best contribution he had was getting injured so Bart could get in. But if you think Bart did get injured for 6 weeks, would you have any confidence in Frank Fielding? Now, I'm sure he's probably a lovely man, and when I saw him a couple of years ago in pre-season, obviously with COVID, he looked a very steady Eddie.
Yeah,
but he's certainly no Biakowski. And this chap Long, he's obviously got some pedigree about him. I believe didn't he win League One last year with Hull City? Wasn't he was
yeah, I mean, he's an established player there, wouldn't he? And he must have ambitions to aim higher himself, which is all to the good. I think you're right. These kinds of moves, each of the signings have been additions to the squad and good additions at that. None of those feel like duds. I'm just reading the piece as we're speaking here. It says the Lions have done nearly all of their incoming business, unless there are outgoings. And it goes on to talk about John Daddy. I don't know whether there's any interest, whether that's the kind of interest that Gary Rowett is talking about from someone somewhere to take him on. Otherwise, it's loan moves out, guaranteed loan moves out for the young trio of Alex Mitchell, Tyler Bury, and Isaac Alofe. So, I mean, Gary Rowett kind of waxes lyrical a little bit about the benefits of putting these boys out on loan to gain experience and then hopefully, possibly benefit us. Who knows what the situation might be from Christmas onwards. So, I don't know. It feels stable at the moment. It's very odd, very odd, isn't it, to feel like there's nothing rocking the boat. We've made some good, solid signings, and there are plans afoot for our young prospects. It's I don't know, rather un-Millwall in many respects.
There's certainly something not right, is there? All this actual sort of control and calmness around the club. You're right. It's not us.
It's not us. It's not the Millwall I know. I mean, just reading the Jed piece. I mean, he makes no secret, Mike, of his ambition to play in the Premier League. I can't blame him for that. Can you? I mean, I think any player of his standing and ability is entitled to want a shot at the big time. He's 27. He's reasonably late in his career. He might not get many opportunities if he doesn't come up with the Lions. So I don't blame him if he does want to see out his contract, and then who knows what might happen from there. I mean, I remember Steve Morrison getting his shot at Norwich, wasn't it? And I know people get rather het up about these things, but I can't blame a player for wanting to consolidate their career financially, family-wise, and everything.
Yeah, and you've got to agree with that. And I think as well, I'm not saying that. I know there's obviously like a realism with some players. If you're sort of like mid-table, League One, League Two, with all due respect, you might think I'm not going to make it. But if you're like a Jed Wallace, who a few years ago was being sort of touted by Aston Villa, remember as well when Middlesbrough signed George Saville, they tried to sign Wallace as well for a promotion push, and we turned that area of the deal down. So it's not as if he's not had his suitors or people that fancy him over the past couple of seasons. And let's be brutally honest. I know Millwall fans, and we chuckle about it sometimes. You'll get a player who's done a bit of a good service. He comes back, you give him a round of applause, and then you boo him every time he touches the ball. But I cannot see any Millwall fan who would be angry with Jed Wallace if he went at the end of next season. I could understand they'd be angry with the club maybe not sort of cashing in, or maybe giving him like another year extension to put a bit of value on him. But for him, as you say, I mean, yes, he loves Millwall, and yes, Millwall's got this connection with players that once you're here, you can only really sort of play here. Like Steve Morrison, you said, is a good example.
Yeah.
But it's not. He's not a Millwall fan. It's not as if he sat in the cold blow lane and all this kind of thing. And all this. He's been a fantastic servant for the club. As I said when we did our show a couple of months ago about sort of best players we've seen and the highlighted the players and how we got on. Easily one of the best players, if not the best player we've had in the last 10 years.
Well, we've got no one else like him, and that, I mean, to replace him would probably require a level of investment that we goes back to previous point. We haven't got the budget for. Let's get it right, listeners. To get another Jed Wallace, someone also willing to be. How can I put it? He's got the talent, he's got the inventiveness, Michael, but he's also got that kind of Millwall workman-like mentality, which is a very hard combination to find in the world of football these days. I mean, the piece is quite interesting actually. If you do get a chance to read it, listeners, talks about him playing non-league till he was 17, and then how much he's had to work to get where he is. He feels privileged to play in one of the best leagues in the world. He's a down-to-earth boy, and Jed, I think, is entitled to his shot. If he doesn't get it with the Lions, which would be wonderful, wouldn't it? I mean, if this season were to shape up as we hope, and as the club has invested to the best of its ability to achieve, then that would be wonderful. But otherwise, I couldn't begrudge him a move on if he could get it for the top flight. Who knows? we're talking about goal scoring last season being our problem. We do have our goal scorer in place, Michael. New talent. It's called Matt Smith, and he's scored in pre-season. I've netted 3 times apparently in their tune-up matches, and he's scored up in Scotland. So he's played abroad in Scotland, and in the 3-2 loss to Watford as well, and he scored at Barnet as well. We've signed Bennett Gabfobe with the intention of solving a problem, but I think maybe the solution is still going to be Matt.
Yeah. Do you know what? You spatting off those stats there. It reminds me of times. Remember when we had the Rice Henderson, and everyone was like, he's scored 5 in the last 3 games, and it was like,
That's right.
3 of them was a hat trick in the FA Cup against National League.
That's right.
Dagenham and Redbridge. So but no, you can only play the opposition that's in front of you. I do like Matt Smith, and I know that I was a bit critical when we first signed him. Because I thought he was a bit past it. But like you say, he knows where the back of the net is. I mean, Afobe is class. I know he's had his troubles over the last recent years, but I think when he was at sort of Wolves and Bournemouth, he knows where the back of the net is. And let's just hope we're not relying on a player who can only manage quarter of an hour a week in Matt Smith again. But Bradshaw's injured again, isn't he?
Yes. I mean, Afobe is going to be hopefully our regular first choice. Let's hope he stays fit. It's not a bad combination of Afobe first choice with Matt Smith coming off the bench as and when needed. I imagine that's how it's going to work out, listeners. Bradshaw, the world's unluckiest man, isn't he? Who knows? We must have broken a mirror or committed some sin in a previous worldly existence or something. Loan options for the 3 youngsters. I mean, this is a separate story. I did mention it in the first bit. Talking about Isaac Lofe and Tyler Bury and Alex Mitchell. I've not seen enough of Alex Mitchell to take a view, other than the sense that he looks very old beyond his years, Michael. The picture popped up on the official club feed. He's only 19, but I thought, blimey, you look worldly. That face looks like it's been lived in a few times,
Yeah, he's never going to get ID'd, is he, down the local ASDA?
Isaac Alofe obviously helped Sutton win Football League status last season. Who knows whether that's where he's going to go, to get regular football. Each of those are prospects, and we'll see what the other loan options are for Tyler and for Alex. At least it does seem as though Gary Rowett has the basis of a squad that he's going to be happy to take into the season, but it doesn't seem to be including Abdul Malik, our one-time hot prospect who's now receiving questionable career advice, according to Gary. He's turned down our contract, gone to Portsmouth, who have said thanks but no thanks to him, and he's now training with Watford. This must be difficult for these young boys, Michael. I think that it's easy to forget they're just kids, and they're dependent on the advice of agents who too often in this life are interested in their own, their own interests rather than what's best for the player and what will benefit him in his career. I mean, I would have thought that a chance to play with Millwall would be a good thing, but maybe the boy doesn't see it that way. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's sort of there's a half lingering smell of the old Fred Onidimna contract when he was outstanding for us, but he wouldn't sign, and it was causing issues between Neil Harris and Fred when he was there. But yeah, you're right, and sometimes you just want to get these young players and sort of like half bang their heads together and sort of make them see what their agents are trying to do. I mean, I know to a point the agent is obviously trying to get his best for the player to a degree, but as you say, they're also doing it for themselves. I can't remember a couple of years ago, but I remember one of the years, obviously pre-COVID, when one of the transfer windows got absolutely smashed out of the park. It was there was an astronomical amount of the fees in that window went to agents. So they didn't even go to the players or the club. So I think with Isaac, it wouldn't surprise me. You heard it here first. If he doesn't go to Sutton, it wouldn't surprise me if Gary Rowett calls up his mate Callum up north. And tries to maybe get him there because what everyone's got to remember as well is that Callum Davidson's secured European football as well. So it's not just the SPFL where you might occasionally play Celtic and Rangers and the likes of Hearts, etc. But if they get through their qualifying, they're in European competition. So would you rather have someone like Isaac, who's obviously got huge potential but may not be ready for the Championship, just sitting on your bench getting 10, 15 minutes a week, and then obviously the fans sort of, not turning's the wrong word, but you know what I mean, sort of sitting there thinking he's clearly not ready, or do you loan him out somewhere like that? I think using the right connections. But yeah, as you say, these Millwall seem to know what they're doing with these young players and how they're loaning them out. There's not been really any bad stories. You know, obviously the McNamara one was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Isaacs was great too. So they obviously work. One player who's actually striking me as not is he still here, but kind of I'm surprised he's still here. Is Ben Thompson, because he's been featured in a lot of like promotional material in the new kit and everything like that. And obviously everyone loves Ben Thompson for his determination, but he was very much finished at the end of last year, weren't he?
Yeah, and you know, obviously there's this thing as to whether Gary Rowett really sees him as part of the midfield. We do seem to be awash with good midfielders. Another story here about Ryan Leonard resuming full training. You'd expect Ryan Leonard to be, once he's fully fit, to be a first choice. We've got Saville as almost certainly a first choice. Billy Mitchell, and then where does Ben fit? And you're right, I've seen the same
as well.
Clifton Belt, yeah, it was an experienced player. You know, I mean, I suppose Ben is an experienced player, really. Perhaps not a championship level, but certainly an experienced player. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I've seen the same images. I mean, he's one of our own, and he does represent Millwall in many fans' eyes. He's just like them. He's come from the terraces, isn't he? So he is Millwall through and through. But equally, Ben's got to think about his own career, and you know, being far down the list, maybe 4 or 5 down the list of choices at the Den, he's not going to get many starts, and that's a hard situation for him to find himself in, I would think. But the kind of Pompey link you keep hearing about are possible, but it doesn't seem to come to much much solidity, does it? So I don't know, but yeah, you're right. I saw the same as on one of the wallpapers. I've got to get with the kids' street slang these days, Mike. But a wallpaper apparently is what you put on, not what you put on the walls, listeners. Is what you have on your phone. It's like a phone image of Ben in the new Millwall shirt.
Listeners, Nick has stupidly printed off all the pictures of Ben Thompson and wallpapered his front room.
I've wallpapered it. I'd also called it. I don't call it his shirt anymore now, listeners. I call it the drip. That's the new thing, isn't it? You see that on the Instagram club Instagram account. Their drip, which apparently is their shirt and turnout, their kind of general style. So I'm hanging with the kids here, mate. I'll tell you. So we shall see. Abdul Malik, talented boy in need of good advice. We don't. At 18, I suppose you think you know it all at 18, don't you? And you don't know tickety boo at that point in your life. There we are. That's the Millwall news. I haven't been to any pre-season games. Have you done any pre-season events or games, Michael?
I haven't yet, in truth, but there's somebody who I've been speaking to who's actually been to. It was the Dulwich game, wasn't it? Dulwich game and
Beckenham. We played at Beckenham, haven't we?
Yeah, and apparently the what they've seen is very good. Obviously, you can't, with all due respect to Dulwich and Beckenham, you can't really take too much, from those games. But apparently, with the Dulwich game, they were trying to play a bit of football, and Millwall played well then. Apparently, the Beckenham game was completely different and was a bit more physical, but Millwall matched them as well. So it seems very positive. From what I'm hearing on the grapevine from people who've been nipping down to these games, it does seem very positive at the moment. Again, I'm not sure if I'm in your top 6 camp just yet, Nick. So I don't think beating Motherwell and Dudley Hamlet means we're going to be pushing for the
top
automatic.
6.
Yeah. Can you imagine at Christmas when we're 4th from bottom? What's going on?
Come back and get your money back.
Yeah.
Your money back from Achtung, Millwall. We'll be in, I don't know where. We can't go abroad at the moment. We're in HMP Britain at the moment, so I don't know where we'll be. We won't be online anyway. There we are, dear listeners. Pre-season. The season starts in 2 weeks' time. They're selling the tickets for the Portsmouth Caribou Cup game. £18 a ticket, Michael. That seemed a bit strong to me. I know I've just said how we haven't got a budget and we're skint and we've had a year and a half nearly without any income, but it's still I'm not going to be able to make that game anyway, listeners. So I'm moaning about something that is of no consequence to me. But 18 quid a ticket seemed a bit strong to me.
Yeah, and again, I think the club have done actually really well, like trying to keep fans
I'm not
engaged.
really moaning. Yeah.
No, I know, but I know what you mean as well. In the sense that, blimey, 18 quid. I mean, I said to my wife about like us and the boys going, and it was a bit like, well, for us and the boys and the baby who doesn't need to have a ticket paid for, because obviously he's only one. It's like 55 quid, or something like that.
It hurts,
and you're like,
doesn't it?
League Cup football.
Go without a week's shopping.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, kids, no chocolate spread sandwiches.
Nothing
today.
tonight. We went to Millwall last Tuesday night.
Yeah.
But you saw Willow's return.
It's a bit steep.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose it's not your regular East Stand and the West Stand only open kind of £10 entry, all packed into one stand kind of night. Maybe they're anticipating with the first game back after the eternity since we've been going to football regularly after a year and a half nearly. Maybe they're anticipating a good crowd for it. So anyway, let's hope it does get a few quid in for the club, because, as you say, we've had a tough year. Now, Michael and I, the reason we're talking really is this supporter survey. So I'm going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, Michael and I will dig deep into the numbers of the supporters survey. We'll be right back.
Achtung, Millwall.
Achtung Millwall supports the Lions Food Hub, and all of our advertising revenues will be donated to support this fantastic initiative. It's now based at the Lions Centre on Bolina Road, and it's run by our own Kelly Webster. This is a friendly food bank supporting families in the Bermondsey and SE16 area. If you can help support the Lions Food Hub in any way, please visit @Lions Food Hub on Twitter, or get in touch with us at Achtung Millwall. The Lions Food Hub. Come on, you Lions. Just to interject on the show a moment, if I may, dear listeners, I received an email from Millwall fan Rob Woodford, who is a qualified London cabbie and London guide. And Rob is organising a walkabout, a Millwall History Walkabout and Heritage Day on the 4th of September, starting from West India Quay Station at 11 a.m. on Saturday the 4th of September. And it's going to be covering the origins of the club that we love, Millwall, in Docklands, a couple of the pubs, the George, and of course the Lord Nelson, including the sites of the former grounds and local history along the way. It sounds like an utterly fantastic event. I'm going to put a link to buy tickets, £12.50. From Eventbrite. I'll stick that Eventbrite link in the show notes and in Twitter and the social media. Sounds like a really interesting day out. So Saturday the 4th of September, Millwall History and Heritage Day with Millwall fan qualified guide Rob Woodford, and sounds like a really cracking day out. I wish I'd thought of doing it actually. Now you've said that, Rob. Thanks for letting me know that. And now back to the show. Welcome back, dear listeners. Now, I don't know about you. I did remember seeing this thing come round, Mike, because there's a few kind of tart remarks online about how no one they know took part in the survey. But there was an email, wasn't it? The club sent out an email a while ago with a link, which I did. I took part in it. I don't know if that's carves me out as real wall or, not old school enough because I took part in a supporter survey or not. I'm too old to care, but I certainly remembered seeing it. I think sometimes people kind of just delete emails and don't really read them. But it's quite an interesting report. It was just a 2-page thing, one of which is just the kind of cover, and then there's the analysis of the numbers. 4,000 fans or 4,000 returns took part in this Millwall supporter survey. And I think the first thing to say, Mike, is well done for Millwall for doing it, because I've never known one be done before, ever.
Yeah.
Which is a step in the right direction.
It absolutely is. You've got clubs, and without trying to sort of say anything too outrageous, but you've got some clubs like Newcastle, for example, who don't particularly like their owner, and they don't feel like they're being listened to. You've got other Premier League clubs who don't feel they're being listened to, but our club has proactively sent out a statement saying we want to hear your thoughts. Now,
Yeah.
It's a bit similar to voting to a degree, and apologies if those listening to this who didn't sort of take part, if you will, but it's kind of like you can't really moan too much about things if you don't put your point across. If you're not happy with things, or if you like it says here, like with like how the club or the public perception is of the club and all this kind of stuff. If you can't moan and groan about answers and results and things the club are going to do if you didn't contribute towards it. And I have to say, from someone who helps organise the voting for the player of the season vote, to get £4,000 to answer
4,000 fans.
4,000 fans. Sorry,
Yeah.
to answer this is incredible, because sometimes trying to get just those votes for player of the season, it is like getting blood out of a stone, Nick. So well done the club to get 1 in 3, 1 in 4 of our fans to answer. I think they've done very well.
It's in that ballpark, and also it's quite hard to get people to do stuff. It's incredibly hard. It's not hard to get them to moan about things. It's very, very hard to actually come up with a suggestion that works and is kind of legal and possible and works in the real world of 2021. It's easy for people to go online and say this, that, and the other. But nevertheless, 4,000 responses is pretty good by any stretch of the imagination. The job I used to do worked on surveys on a principle that if you got 10% of people to respond, you'd done very, very well. You were kind of worker of the week for getting that amount of response. So to get, as you say, 1/3 responses is a good return, and also it gives validity to the numbers. Now, many people will take the piss, and many people will say it's not real war, whatever that might mean, to do this kind of thing. But I think it's if you don't do it, then you'll be criticised whether you do it or don't do it. So put that all to one side. There's some interesting questions in there, and the main thing that's obviously the centerpiece of this little graphic that people have put on here, but I don't think it's the most important statistic. But the centerpiece of the graphic is: do you feel valued by the club? And just short of 62% of people said yes to that question. Out of those 4,000 odd, not sure 22.5% ish, and then 15% said no, they don't feel valued by the club. I think the year we've just had, Michael, in my opinion, just my humble opinion, does show that the club is aware of the value of its fans and has, has actually gone a long way as far as it's able to in its budget to show that. I don't know what other things the club could have done in the past year and a half, certainly, that it didn't do. I don't know what else people are looking for if they're not seeing that the club does value us at that point.
And do you know what? It's not even sort of like the major stuff or offering discounts or anything like that. It's like the little things where they're constantly sending you emails to let you know.
Like this coffee morning business, I've not been to one, but you don't have to be doing that, laying on free tea and coffee and biscuits for people.
Yeah, I went to the first coffee morning when it was launched. Shona, who is the support liaison officer, was obviously chatting with members from the Mill Sports Club and got this view of Brew with a View, as they've called it.
Brew with a View, yeah.
And it really, really is like quite good fun. It is quite good fun. They have the sort of telly on in the background where they just have the football on, and you just sit there and you just have a cup of tea and a chat, and it's just as simple as that. And
yeah.
And most other clubs, let's be honest with you, in a sort of COVID pandemic situation, which other club would openly open its doors to let you go sit in their like exec box or their exec lounge and sit there with the likes of some of the sort of staff and the directors? And because I mean, when I was there, Max, who was there, who does the iFollow commentary, and it was brilliant. And it was brilliant talking to Max about how the season was, what it was like going up and down the country during COVID. Sammy, who makes the videos, Sammy Bruff, he was there as well, and we was talking about all the videos that he made, and like when we signed, I'll whisper it, when we signed Troy Parrott, but all those kind of things, and Billy Taylor was there, and these are staff members who don't need to be there. They don't need to come down to a coffee morning to have a chat. Like Shona didn't need to arrange this, but they done it purely to keep fans engaged. And like you say, it's free. You don't have to pay to go.
No, you can just walk in, get yourself a drink and a cup of coffee. Not.
Yeah, and again, I know there'll be some I know there'll be someone's like, oh yeah, like the old them, we wouldn't have had fucking tea and coffee and all that. But you know what else? You know, you want to keep the engagement going. You want to keep people talking and connected to the club. What a great thing to do. And we've had on our pod as well, haven't we? We had Billy Taylor on telling us all what's going on. He was telling us not highly confidential information, but he was obviously
No, he wouldn't part
telling
with
us
that, would he? He wouldn't tell us that the good stuff.
He did that after we recorded, of course. But yeah, but
not on the record.
He come on the show twice, and I think one of them was actually sort of half off his own back to actually update the supporters. And
Yeah,
what other clubs have media directors proactively reaching podcasts to talk to the fans and answer the questions? I think we've done really well.
This is it. I mean, I was reading. I think it was Inter Milan, and I think Arsenal are involved with this kind of. It's a company called Socios. I don't know how you pronounce it, and it's like a profit-making organisation that you join if you're a fan of Inter Milan or Arsenal or the others. I can't think of it. I think West Ham flirted with them a little bit, and there was a bit of an outcry, But you know, people talk about being valued by the club and not involved or not involved, whatever the case may be. Well, that's Arsenal's response to fan engagement, is to contract out to this Socios company, which is a subscription model where you pay to basically get to vote on often quite non-important things to do with being an Arsenal fan. I haven't got any examples. I've never looked into it, but I do know that Socios are a company and they contract out to fairly big name clubs like Inter Milan with worldwide followings, where your fan in Australia or I don't know, you know, kind of South Africa or somewhere can subscribe to their Arsenal Socios and feel like they get a vote on Arsenal related matters. Well, we haven't got that here, thank God. I mean, you know, I wouldn't want that, because that's a bit like you're paying to be a fan by another channel, you know. And I'd also, anyone that don't feel valued by the club, I'd also contrast it with the past. We had no one from the club, no one ever, to my memory, I'm thinking back to the 70s and 80s and large slices of the 90s, really. No one ever really made any effort to find out what people thought or wanted in any way. So, you know, I know that you can't constantly look back, and that's part of this, an interesting part actually of this survey. But the kind of the yearning for the old days when it was real Millwall, I think, is a bit of a I don't know. It's a little bit of a red herring at times, because you know we're living now, and one interesting thing, almost a centerpiece for me of the survey, and I think this is a really important point. I don't know if many fans really picked up on this. I get that you're going by 4,000 responses, so that's not the complete picture, but you can only play with what you get. But it's the supporters' age density chart. I don't know if you picked up on that, Michael. The number of fans, the vast majority of Millwall, or the responses here, which we've got to go by, are 46 plus. The biggest slice are in the 56 to 65 category, which includes my good self. And there's a fair chunk aged 66 to 75. And then it tells that the curve is on the upper end of the age group. Now, I don't know how that relates to other clubs, and I don't know how it relates to maybe sports generally, in terms of responses and actual bums on seats inside the ground. But you know, I don't know about you, Mike, but when I go to Millwall, I look around and I see a lot of blokes aged not far short of me, you know, from the 70s. You know, it's a bit of a problem. It actually it matches, interestingly. I just did our own Spotify for Achtung Millwall, and the listeners for the show, almost it's the same curve. It's as you get over 45, 35 onwards, upwards. That's where our listeners lie. It's where our fans lie, and I think that's a potential long-term time bomb for the club, because we do need to reach the younger fans, because as I've found recently, old fans die off. You know, luckily I didn't, but you could have done. So you know, it's a reducing number of at the upper end of the age scale, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, wasn't an optimistically morbid statement to come out with. No, I'm only joking.
Well, no, it happens. I mean, this is, you know,
no, you're right. You are right.
This is the thing, you know.
Yeah.
Look around the
But I'll
den.
tell you what. Yeah. And the thing is as well is that I was going to make a joke to say there's no one under 12 on the supporters age density, but we'll actually get to.
I suppose they're not
a bit more.
responding to email. I mean, there may be other reasons. It might be too simplistic to look at
But
this
my-
curve, but it's interesting.
Yeah, but my one thing I think that the club do need to work on, and if they are doing it behind the scenes and we're not privy to it, then I obviously will stand corrected. But there's one thing sort of like going out to the community, and which Mill do fantastically. I'm not going to say we don't.
Yeah.
And going out to the local schools and everything like that. But it's one thing inviting them along once or twice. It's nothing keeping them there.
Yeah.
I think the problem when you're a London club, and it's just, and in my ignorant bliss, I don't know too much of the travel systems outside of London or up north or anything like that. But I think now that we've got this such a large tube network and train network, I mean, do you remember, Nick, years ago before that overground line was built, how long it would take you to get to Highbury from
Oh God,
Canada Water?
no, it would be a jaunt. It'd be a long way from South East London.
I went to an Arsenal game a few years back. Arsenal West Ham, funny enough, it was a game where it was a midweek when Millwall weren't playing. I managed to get a free ticket. I got from Canada Water to the Emirates in like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So if you are a neutral fan and you don't care about which football team you're going to support, or you're going to wake up one morning and think, I'm going to support a London team, you really can take your pick, because you can be from one side of London to the other in what, quarter of an hour, 20 minutes. So
yeah.
So if you're, like I said, if you're a young fan, yes, Millwall aren't necessarily one of the glamour clubs. I know we hype on and shout about, the smallest big club in the world and all this malarkey, or biggest small club. But what is the club doing, and what are the fans doing and the community doing to get these kids in and get these young people in who are not influenced is the wrong word, but what are they doing to actually get them in and keeping them here? Because that's like you say, 20, 30 years time, if these stats are the way it's going to go, you're not going to get that many more down the den, and we're not going to grow, and we're going to get left behind.
It's quite interesting. My nephew, who's aged 13 now, it's quite. I mean, you've got young kids yourself, Mike, and I'm sure listeners will relate to this. The world is now lived through the medium of YouTube and to some level, I suppose, the kind of Instagram or WhatsApp and all this kind of business. That's where the kids' focus of attention is, and there's no good. I can take the piss out of him, and I can say, well, why don't you go and actually kick a football rather than playing it on your FIFA and all this kind of stuff, or Formula One, which is the presentation of sports now. I was watching the cricket game last night, the 100, which is presented as though it's you're playing a video game. And I watched Formula One with him on Sunday, and that's presented almost. It looks like a video game. That's how it looks. It's easy to moan about it, and our age group in our 46 plus up to 70, cold blow lane through and through. It's you've got to reach kids through the media that they use, and it's kind of hard because my heart's not in the world of TikTok and other stuff like that, but that's where they are, and you've got to reach them somehow. I don't have the answers, and come on the wrong podcast if you're looking for us to break out into YouTube. We're not going to do any of that because it's not my scene, man. Like the old swimming advert used to say, it's not my scene, man.
Yeah, it's the young kids in their new drips who are on YouTube.
Drips. My concession, I'm going to try and use the word drip every time we have a show now. So you're going to hear that word a lot, listeners. But it's the world is changing, and those that moan about it, like me, are in shuffling along the generation game, kind of turntable. Reaching these younger groups is going to be crucial. And as you say, you're right, Michael, that there's a lot of choice. We are in the middle of London, which is where, how many top flight clubs have we got? 6 clubs that would expect to play on a European stroke world stage in some cases. So it's kind of hard, but that's, I think we've also got to think about, kids now seem to they follow their Premier League clubs, but I think there's a route in to get them to follow the Millwall as well, which is sacrilege to anyone of my generation, where you bleed Millwall, and that's the only club in the world. I think you've got to accept that a lot of people follow the top flight. Maybe you can get them to follow a club as a second. I know it's very hard.
Yeah, and I think as well, football, whether we like it or not, football has changed. And I know that's so obviously said. We had the thing with the Super League not so long ago where everyone was kicking off. But I remember a couple of years ago. Obviously, stuff that I do with the supporters club is occasionally like they'll contact the supporters club for like sort of newspaper interviews and all that kind of stuff. And I remember one of the ones I got contacted about was, I think it was from someone like ESPN UK. It was a rather large company. And it was basically about how children and young fans these days, they don't follow the clubs anymore, Nick. They follow the player. And it was around the time that Ronaldo had left to join Juventus, and ESPN were like, "Oh, we've done this data where literally like 100,000 Real Madrid fans over the last X amount of years now suddenly have all logged on to Juventus's website and bought Ronaldo shirts."
Social media connect. I mean, there's a stat here on the same subject as well. 55% feeling increased connection to the club through social media, but use of social media, and that point that you just made there, Michael, is almost entirely social media driven. Twitter and Instagram and the like. The major names command millions upon millions of followers, and that's where the crumbs that will sustain our little club are to be found. It's quite hard as a baby boom generation product, because you do feel slightly removed from it all. It used to be music that separated the generations. Now I think it's YouTube and TikTok and the like, because it looks moronic to me.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what though, with Millwall though, Merv Payne's book title just sums it up perfectly. It's because my dad does. I genuinely don't know any Millwall fans who do not support Millwall because they want what they chose to. It is all family connections, like all my family. It comes from my dad. It comes from
familial linkage.
Like
so
and that's where obviously we pride ourselves. And don't get me wrong, we're all very proud of that. And uniquely, that's what makes us. But yeah, as you say, this is the reason why. I'm not blaming the club for this at all, but this is the reason the likes of Jed Wallace do leave when offers come in, and Steve Morrison's leave when offers come in, because realistically, will they play in these huge global, sold out, packed out stadiums every week if they're playing for a local, reasonably big but big local club? No, I don't think they will. But no, going back to the survey, I think we've done very well. I'd like to touch on the 4 boxes at the top with regards to the SLO. You've got
supporter liaison officer, shown up.
Yeah, you've got nearly 25% who's aware of who Shona is and how to contact them. You've got 23%, so that's nearly half know who they are, and that's brilliant. That's brilliant that like on that stats that half of the fan base know who they need to contact, or that there is a contact if it's needed. And I have to say, I know Shona reasonably well, don't get me wrong, but the work she puts in for this fan base is unbelievable. I cannot say enough just how hard she works. It's commendable.
She comes over well on social. I mean, I've not spoken to her. I've never met the lady at all. But she comes over well on social media. She will respond back to you. I mean, I get every sense that if she can help you, she will do. And if she can't help you, she'll tell you why she can't help you. Which is all I think most people look for in a customer contact situation, I think.
Yeah.
So I want to second that. So Shona Groves, Mill supporter liaison officer, she's doing a great job. And I've not seen a bad word about her actually online, which is quite something. Cause, it's that's an achievement on her part. I mean, the other thing that just while we're looking at the top boxes, there's one about the club's communication with supporters. I mean, I just want to repeat a point I made earlier on. The club's communication with supporters through social media, through email, through many other ways. I mean, I don't actually see the program anymore because I don't get it, but there's many ways the club do try and communicate with its fans. At a certain point, it's up to you whether you want to listen to those messages. But it's a hell of a lot better than it ever used to be, Mike.
Yeah, and it really is. And if you look at 46 and 26, what's that? What's 72%? Just over, and with the decimals, it's just over. So nearly 3/4 of the people who were asked actually think the club communicates well. And this goes back to it. You can't ask more for that. That's have a survey of one in three, which is a great number. Nearly all of those agree that the club communicate well. And when it says that, I think there is a lot of room for improvement in this area. I feel like I never know what's happening at the club. With all due respect, and I don't mean this again, it sounds like I'm bashing up people who are doing these surveys, but I'd use my dad as an example here. He doesn't do social media. He doesn't really go on the website that often, or
I think there's a lot more people like that than you imagine. I think.
Oh, absolutely. And to be brutally honest with you, and I'm not just saying it to plug the pod, but I think with my dad as well, again using an example, a lot of the sort of news he hears is through this, whether I'm on it or not. But even with those, I wouldn't even take that as a negative from the club that they need to do more. Maybe it's a kind of, well, these fans just prefer pen and paper posts now instead of emails all the time. But again, I think this could be an element where, as we've said countless times over this call, Nick, unfortunately, you have to move with the times if you want to keep in the know. If you want to,
yes, you do.
But
you do.
But I have to say that the best one for me, and fans, if you've seen it in the bottom right, is: have you ever watched any video content on iFollow? And 70% is yeah. Unfortunately, there wasn't a box that said, "Is it shit or not?"
You didn't have much choice last season, so yes, 70% nearly watched video content on iFollow. With a 26.3% saying no. I don't know what there's a bit that doesn't add up to 100 quite, does it? There's a bit there that some have not said neither yes or no. Maybe they're keeping quiet as to whether their iFollow habit. I don't know.
It reminds me of that Simpsons where there's the mayoral election and like Sideshow Bob wins by 101% and Mayor Quimby gets like 1%, and it's like 1% error in the voting or something like that.
I've got the answer to that question in the faintest font. There's the little bit on the end is really faint. I don't know what iFollow is. 4.18%. Lucky you. People.
Yeah. Sorry, Max. Sorry, Carl.
Ignorance is bliss. It's not about the comms. I mean, the actual standard of it sometimes, and the directorial ineptitude, is that a word? Is amateur hour at times. But anyways, it is what it is. The one that made me laugh, just to close us on the survey and on the show itself, Mike, is the one on the left side. 46.58% of our fans are hurt when anyone says anything negative about our club.
Not the Millwall, I know.
Whilst it's a majority of others, but 35.5% don't let opinions of others bother them too much. 14% don't care what people say, think, or write about our club. 2.2% enjoy it when Millwall talked about negatively. They like it. 2.5% nearly. They love it. I love it when we're getting slagged. And then 1.35% aren't sure. I don't know. Anyway, there we are. So I think that must add up to 50 over the majority of those three answers. But I think we're going to have to get a new song now. It's no one likes us, we don't care, but maybe a few of us do. Can that be built into? No
one likes us, we don't care, unless you're in the 46.58% of people who get a bit worked up. Not sure how to make that rhyme.
53% don't care. We don't care. I can't.
Yeah, 53% don't care. The other 46% sat there going, no.
No one likes us, and 53% of us don't care. 46.5% might do. Oh dear. I mean, there's a serious point lurking in there, but I haven't got the energy to go chasing after it anymore. I want to say a huge thank you to Michael Avery for taking time out of his working day, to come on the show and talk trash.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for coming on.
No, that's all right. I have to say, dear listeners, as I said to Nick before the show, I had my second COVID jab recently, and yeah, I wasn't feeling too great, to say the least.
No, you're a trooper. You've done well, mate.
Yeah, I had the Moderna, so as I messaged to Nick, I felt like Apollo Creed in Rocky IV, and then about 2 hours later, I felt like Ivan Drago had punched me in the face. So but again, I don't want to put that off anyone getting the vaccine. So
there we are.
Yeah,
get jabbed up. Thank you for listening, dear listeners. We'll be back soon, I guess. A couple of weeks to the start of the season. I won't be bound by any deadlines, but we'll be back soon, I guess. So until then, from Michael and myself, it's Arrivederci Millwall. Thank you for listening. And bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Achtung Millwall. If you enjoyed the show, please go over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a cheeky little review. Arrivederci Millwall. Till next time.
Who do you want to watch?